Hello, and welcome to the Orthodontic Products Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Werner. Today we have with us veteran dental marketing experts Mark Ross and Michael Ventriello. They recently joined forces to launch PitchIt DDS. This is an investor presentation creation service specifically for dental industry startup companies. Orthodontists are creative and innovative by nature, and that creativity and innovative drive often extends into product development and launching a startup company. But how do you get investor funding to take your product to the next level? How do you create a compelling pitch? That's where PitchIt DDS comes into play, as I understand it. So to tell us more, we have Michael and Mark to walk us through. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Great. So can you talk to me about your experience kind of prior to coming together? You actually came together before PitchIt. So can you talk about your experience in the marketing industry, dental industry, and what led you to this point?
It's kind of a funny story. Mike and I, at one point in time, competed against each other for a business. We were separate agencies, and we would run into each other on the way out after a presentation. We'd pass each other, but we were very respectful of our talents. And about a year ago, Mike and I started working on another project together, and we said, we just started talking more and more, and we collaborated on a few ideas and on a few relevant to a few customers. And that led us to this brainstorm of an idea called PitchIt DDS.
What were you seeing in
Mike,
the
you wanna answer
industry? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
That's okay. And really, the inspiration for that is really the nature of what's going on in dentistry right now. It's really a hotbed of innovation. There's a lot of investment money coming into the industry, and there's more and more companies launching and pitching. And a lot of dental meetings and conferences will have a Shark Tank type scenario where companies go and they're vying for, investment money or the big prize. And Mark and I have sat through some of these, and the pitches just weren't good. And it's like, what, we could help here. So, that was really the inspiration.
Okay. Well, Mark, you kind of alluded to this. You two actually came together last year to create a different platform. It's called the Virtual Focus Group Platform. And it's called the Virtual Dental Team, and it's a virtual focus group platform. So can you talk about that first, because that'll lead us into PitchIt DDS.
Sure. Having been involved in several focus groups, one thing that was a constant in every one of them was a customer was saying, "Why don't we always do this?" There were always aha moments where they learned a lot or it supported what they already knew. And from that, and you add in COVID and a pandemic and the need to be virtual at that time, I had just thought, there's a way to do a focus group without having to bring everybody into a room in Chicago, in New York, in California, wherever, and beholden to who could show up in those locations, the costs, the venue costs, the food, the travel, all those kinds of things. And it's very expensive. They're successful, but very expensive. So the virtual concept of doing a focus group lowers the cost by 1/3, 1/2 what it would normally cost. And that kind of lent to the idea to create the virtual dental team. And at that time, I reached out to Mike because we had already been collaborating on some other projects. And I said, "Mike, this is right up our alley. This is something we could be doing together." And I think it's got some legs in it, and a lot of people are already talking about it.
Yeah, and what I really liked about it, Allison, is as marketers, you always want to start from having the research you need to drive the brand strategy, the go-to-market strategy, and sometimes companies just don't do this because of that expense of the focus group.
Mm-hmm.
And this really ensures that there's a marketing baseline, a research baseline rather, for marketing going forward. So it really democratizes the whole premise of a focus group.
Real fast, Allison.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to have voice of customer. Before you launch, before you spend money to launch, you can learn so many different things. And the focus group can be designed to work with different teams around the country so that it's not zip code biased.
Okay.
You can bring in a team of specialists, dental assistants, hygienists. The client can sit in and weigh in if they want to, or they can be, you know, just watching a video after it's done. And we would collaborate very early on to learn what the client wanted to learn and develop and design based on that. And sometimes you would go to companies, to participants that use the product or some that didn't use the product and you wanted to know why. Or they were even using a competitive product.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
So
it opened up a
then,
lot of opportunity.
okay. And so from there, you came into this idea for PitchIt DDS. So you talked a little bit there before about kind of the market with the innovation and new products and services and what you were seeing, especially with those like Shark Tank type, events that are now happening. And, there is a focus with it, especially the orthodontic industry, of really trying to help those startups started by doctors. So can you talk about what a doctor needs to know if they are they have a product idea, they want to start their own company, they want to do a startup? Where does PitchIt come in?
Mike, take the lead on this. This is something you like talking about.
Sure. Really, there's so many entrepreneurial dentists, and they say necessity is the mother of invention, and that's proven day by day in dentistry. A dentist is doing a procedure, says, I could do this better, or if only the design of this instrument was a little more intuitive, whatever that might be. They're always thinking because they're using these things from day to day. So the starting point is, okay, you have an idea. It has to be designed. It should be vetted every step of the way. Someone needs to be testing design. You need to have beta testers. You need to figure out how much money you're going to need to put this into the marketplace, and it's always much more expensive than the entrepreneur thinks. And they'll say, well, I'll put my house up, the mortgage, and there's a lot of that happens too, and
a lot of risk.
It's scary, for marketers, because it's like, oh my God, this guy's betting the farm on this. We really have to dig deeper and see if this is a viable solution for whatever. Is the technology mature? Is there a need for it? Is it a solution in search of a problem? You see that as well too.
Ah, okay.
So, we can help in various phases, but so many companies are undercapitalized, and I think they resist going to a venture capitalist or private investors, angel investors, because they don't want to give up control.
Ah, okay.
But if you don't have anything, you're not controlling anything either. So there's a balance to that.
One of the common threads with every invention is it's somebody's baby. It's somebody's idea. And they go at it very straightforward without looking at it with perspective, and they don't necessarily have advisors that can help them, and a support system that can help them, and somebody to help them look in the mirror and go, hey, this is a great idea, but here's where you need to channel it and what you need to do next. And that's how actually the VDT, the focus group, is actually a great adjunct to the
Okay.
PitchIt concept, because you can really learn what's needed and actually help define your presentation based on what you learn through the focus group. It's not what you need to do both, but it certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It helps a lot.
Okay. So when should an orthodontist who has a product and wants to do a startup, when should they be reaching out to you?
I would say the earliest, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'll tell you why from my experience. A lot of entrepreneurs, when they start up their company, they call their accountant, they have a lawyer, they have other professionals, and many times they bring in the marketing person, the marketing consultant last.
Mm.
And this could be after they gave the product a less than optimal name, or they don't have a clear message.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're already going down a path, and then a marketing consultant goes in and says, whoa, we have to put the brakes on this because we should have done it this way to begin with.
Mm.
And so you're backing up to almost relaunch, rebrand, reposition, and you lose time and money when you do that. Would you agree, Mark?
100%. We have a data sheet that shows what founders wish they did differently after the fact.
Mm.
And I can run through that fast.
Yeah.
58% said more research prior to the launch would have helped. A stronger business plan, better marketing, more financial backing. Of course, that's why they're doing it. Better financial management, a better product, which is interesting because at that point somebody should have said, not a good product. A better team, right? A better team, the board, advisors, anybody that's going to actually help, really key. And it's actually the lowest percentage, but one of the more interesting elements is the pivoting. Learning at what point do you need to kind of redirect. And that's actually, I think while that's a lower percentage out of the mix, with like marketing being 50% and more research being 58% and pivoting being 15%, that's a big move at the end. And pivoting always gets to the point where like, I'm not going to be successful here, or I'm not, or they've launched, but it's not catching. And they've got to be able to shift gears a little bit and find a better niche and refocus. And sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah. And a good example of pivoting, and it's certainly not the only example, is you'll have a company that, they want to get the biggest market share possible. So they'll launch a product into the GP universe because, hey, there's 180,000 practicing dentists or whatever the latest number is.
Right.
So, of course, we want to have that market share. But the product might be very specialized where it would appeal first to a periodontist, an orthodontist, and an endodontist. And rather than starting with that baseline of specialists who are most likely to be an early adopter and build, social proof of it working, and then maybe giving testimonials that a general practice practitioner might say, well, if the specialist says that this is good, maybe I should use it. So that's one example of that pivot.
Okay. Well, I want to take us back to PitchIt, and part of the whole idea is helping, startups, orthodontic startups, develop that compelling pitch for something like funder backing, which you talked about how many of them say, I wish I had had more. So can you talk to me about like what it means to have, what an investor pitch encompasses? Let's start there.
It's very easy. It starts off with the mission or the vision the founder might have.
Mm-hmm.
Why did, they found a need, but what was the mission? What are they trying? What is in their heart? Where is that passion? Because they've got a lot of passion. That's why they pursued it. That's why they could be potentially putting, using part of their mortgage, on a home.
Mm-hmm.
So that it starts there. Then it's pretty basic. It's what problem is being solved,
Mm-hmm.
what financially, and what market size, and what's the opportunity, what's the upside, how big is the marketplace for whatever the product is.
Mm-hmm.
Then it gets into what makes the product unique, and then how do you build traction and revenue, on down to evidence that their team can execute.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often, an idea is great, and quite often there's a good market for it, and quite often they can even show that it'll gain traction. They can prove out that it'll get traction at some point, but they don't have the team to execute.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes some of the guidance comes in, who do you bring in so that when an investor comes in, they don't look at you and go, well, you're an orthodontist, and you came up with a great idea, but this is a totally different animal. A product is totally different from a practice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something you're trained for. And it's not to take anything away from the orthodontists that have launched and have successfully managed a new product and built a business.
Yeah.
But more often than not, that's not something that's scalable.
Mm.
That business mentality is not there. And so you do need to surround yourself with the right team.
And the importance of having, an optimal pitch deck. It's obviously, you only have one chance to make a first impression. That's the old bromide. That's still, is true. But the exercise and the development of a pitch deck is very often a foundation of the marketing that's going to come forward afterwards. So, in the pitch deck, what's the reason for this, for this product? How is it different? So, the positioning of it. What is the branding statement? How are you describing the company and the product? Once you nail that down and you kind of distill that in the investor pitch, that's a jumping off point for a lot of different forms of marketing communication.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think Mark and I have said that to each other a couple of times as we've been doing this.
Yeah. So if you imagine that they've got a product, they've got a deck, they've got all those things, there's a story to be told. And for somebody developing and has they want their baby to grow to a full-grown adult at some point, meaning a successful product.
Yeah.
There has to be a brand story that is really the baseline for the entire presentation. There has to be something they can be passionate about and they can talk to. Because it's important that they're able to talk to it. Because at the end of the day, you're selling to an investor. They've got to feel that they're going to come away in the long run making their money back.
You talked a little bit earlier about how, you've watched a lot of pitches from doctors for their products. What are the things that, you've seen them do that you're like, that's not going to work, or that's handicapping you down the way? You talked a little bit about that, but I'd like to see if you could go a little bit further into the mistakes you've seen.
Well, I think from a copywriter point of view, it's the clarity of the message. Yes, there's the brand story, but how do you execute upon that? So, when you're saying things in PowerPoint slides, how do you distill that in a form that's easy to comprehend and retain? Retention is important too, and that's throughout the deck. You have to make a case for it. That's where the choice of words, how you use them, economy of language is always important. We've always, we remember sitting through what we call death by 1,000 bullets kind of presentations. Those don't resonate well. And then there's the design aspects, and I'm going to turn that over to Mark on that.
Well, I think it just comes down to telling a compelling brand story, and the branding incorporates the visual part of the presentation, the verbal part of the presentation, and then the bones of the presentation, which is the product, the financials, the team, and all those things coming together. But how that story comes together and that common thread that takes an investor through very quickly. They don't want to see more than 8 to 10 slides, 15 slides max. They don't have a lot of time, and sometimes they ask you to just send over what you have right now, maybe a one-sheeter or just 5 slides, and they can make a decision the same way somebody, HR could look at a resume, and it could just go in and out, and that's it. Because they're looking at hundreds and hundreds of presentations. So you've got to it's got to be compelling, and it's got to be something that stands out against everything else. And so having the background of being participated in several pitches and seeing several pitches, it's to our benefit that we can help, or to a customer's benefit, that we can help them and guide them the right way, and even connect them with others in the cycle of raising money. It could be a financial wizard that can help them work on their numbers. It could be venture capital firms who we're closely associated with. There's a lot of different elements we can bring to the table.
I think another element of a successful pitch is who's actually making the pitch. Who is going before the investors with the deck and is basically going to perform on behalf of the company, the founder, to really resonate with the investors. That may not be the founder, and very often it shouldn't be, because they may not be personable. They might be geniuses, but they may not be great communicators. Okay. So that's important, really select who is going to do the pitch. You have the investor, the inventor, the developer on premises to field any questions that are very technical, and that that's very easy to moderate and monitor. And but a lot of times that's the Achilles heel, not having the right presenter.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Because if you're an investor thinking about putting up money, and the presentation by the inventor is just not there, it's not compelling, you're also going to judge them on whether they're able to bring a team together and successfully get your product to market.
Well, and I'd also imagine they're judging them on whether they can make the decision to step aside and let someone who's better at a different aspect of the business.
And that's an X factor that we always mention that to clients, that you're better off having a piece of something that's going to be successful and let somebody really take your product to market versus struggling because you don't really have a business mentality.
And just to tie up the the quality of the presenter, I have a background in computer software, And in that industry, a lot of companies had a high level executive called the chief evangelist. And that was a seed level executive. And that person's job was to go before investors, industry analysts, maybe regulators, what have you, make the pitch, do the presentation, and he had his backup team of, the geeks and the nerds that developed the software and the product in case those questions really got granular in that way. But they were very, very charismatic people, and that's why they were in that position.
Ah, okay. Can you talk to me about why an orthodontic startup should work with an outside team to develop their strategy rather than keeping it all in-house? And I think you did talk a little bit about this before, but if you could go a little bit more on it.
Well, we kind of touched on that. It's having people that understand your industry. They know how to develop a compelling story. They have relationships with VCs, legal, the media, understanding the best way to structure a pitch deck. All those things come together.
Yeah. And some companies or founders are coming from outside of dental. So they might have a pretty mature team, a company, but as they go into a new vertical and they say, you know what, we have this AI insurance validation application that we've been using in medical. We want to launch it into dentistry. And they're more dissimilar industries than a lot of outsiders think. They're not the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the dental industry is so nuanced like no other. And not having a true understanding of the mindset of influencers in the industry, the buyers in the industry, workflow within practices, because if it's a product that's being sold into the practice, that's that's very, very important to understand that dynamic.
And another scenario that I've seen quite often is a company will think they're going into the major leagues by hiring a firm or a consultant that specializes in medical. And that's not the case. So, you're better off vetting the consultant or agency that you're going to work for when you're evaluating them. Like, what do they know about this industry? Can they walk into this and, like, on a dime, introduce me to who I need to be introduced to? Recognize the key opinion leaders, the key distributors, what meetings I should go to without me paying them to basically finance their learning curve, which is going to happen if you don't make that decision.
Okay. Are there any other tips you have for orthodontists as they are looking for an agency to work with? Because those are some really good tips that you just gave. Is there anything else that stands out to you?
I think research into your marketplace is very important before you even reach out to anybody. You need to have a handle on it into yourself, regardless of your background or your expertise as an orthodontist. And you may think you know what other orthodontists are thinking or other practices need. It's important to try to understand as deep as possible what is potentially acceptable with your product. Where does it fit in? What is that unique selling proposition? All these little things are really key. If you have a good handle on that, and then you sit down with a team like PitchIt DDS, I mean, I think then it's impressive and it's important because it speeds up the process. So that's one of the understanding the dynamics, the research, I think is really, really key.
Great. Well, Mike and Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to talk us through this. And it's
Well,
a really
thank
interesting
you, Fran.
pathway for, yeah, it's really interesting that,
Well, thank
there's so
you.
much
Allison,
innovation and
thank
there's so
you.
many
Yeah, and
opportunities. Yeah.
I hope this is valuable, to
Mhm.
the viewers of the podcast, the readers of the magazine and the website, and
Hmm. Yeah.
if they have any questions, Mark and I
Yeah.
are available. But
Yeah.
hopefully this has been useful.
Yeah. And if they do want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
You could go to v-d-t.com.
All right.
That's the VDT main website right now.
Great. Okay.
So
Well,
v-d-t.com.
all right. And we'll put that in our show
And
notes
by
as
the way,
well.
I just want to say,
Yeah.
um, that we're happy to offer some time at no charge to learn a little bit more about a product and help them and guide them.
Oh, great. Great. Well, I'm sure our listeners will appreciate that. So thank you again so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
As always, thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the Orthodontic Products podcast to keep up with the latest episodes. And be sure to check out orthodonticproductsonline.com to keep up with the latest industry news. Until next time, take care.